So, State Representative Brett Hillyer, I appreciate you making time for me to do this. Haven't done a podcast in the morning yet, and meeting you at 8:30 with a little snafu on my own end. I appreciate your patience, but I mean that just shows really how busy you are. Not only with your duties in Columbus, but you're a busy man between here, Uhrichsville, and in Columbus.
Yeah, I still have my day job as an attorney and as a title agent, so days that I'm not doing work in Columbus, I'm still working back here in the community. I'm in court from time to time. I still meet with clients, and I actually think that helps keep me grounded into what's happening to everyday Ohioans.
How so, between here and Columbus?
Well, if you represent a family that is going through a divorce, there are a number of issues you might pick up on, whether it be substance abuse, child care, job opportunities, job losses, domestic violence, drug addiction. You can pick up on all of those things just from meeting with a single family or multiple families or an individual who's had their life change through circumstances that have occurred due to a job loss or the pandemic or even just life's normal trial and tribulations.
So being an attorney, working locally, and then switching over, not even switching, but adding on to your schedule, being a state representative. I mean, what's that first term like? I mean, you were 2018 elected?
Correct. It is difficult. You work in Columbus on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, so typically I have to be there throughout the day. Occasionally, I don't have to be there until the afternoon, so I can meet with clients or go to court in the morning and then have a swift drive down to Columbus and back, work the next morning here in the community, and then go back to Columbus in the afternoon.
So tiring, I imagine.
It is. Representative Landis, when he was serving, made it a point to come back every evening, and I've tried to do that for the most part when applicable and when it could be worked out.
So, I mean, you obviously didn't have a good you personally, I can't speak to. That would be for you. But this has been an interesting first term, to say the least. We go through the coronavirus pandemic. We're going through racial tensions right now. How does that affect your job? I mean, I'm not really sure how a state representative is looked to in these situations. And so from your perspective.
Well, Ryan, so keep in mind there are three separate and distinct branches of the government: the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature. And the legislature is made up of two different houses, the Senate and the House. In a crisis like the pandemic, fairly or unfairly, a lot of the decision-making is put onto the executive because decisions need to be made quickly, and the legislative process, by its very nature, can take some time. We ended up taking off 6 weeks while the results of the pandemic were still largely unknown due to the fear and concern of meeting. After that time, it appeared that maybe perhaps the virus wasn't as deadly as once thought, or wasn't as spreading as quickly, whichever perspective you take into account. So we began resuming meetings. Now, those were a little different. We are practicing social distancing. We're limiting the amount of people that come into the hearing room at any given time. Thankfully, Speaker Householder had enough foresight to broadcast all of the committee meetings and sessions on the Ohio channel so that people don't actually have to drive to Columbus to see what's going on. They can watch it from the comfort of their home or their office. Yeah.
So you continue business as usual. We get through, really, like you said, that 6-week suspension period, essentially. Then we're back to work, and you're right back to work. I mean, I imagine that 6 weeks wasn't spent doing nothing in your role as representative. I'm really interested, as you can tell, in House Bill 674.
Right. Well, so during that 6 weeks, Speaker Householder put together the Ohio 2020 Task Force, of which I was appointed to, and we met at least 3 times a week. Sometimes for, I think, 2 weeks, we met daily on Zoom, and we interviewed business owners, large and small, employees of businesses, large and small, to find out what was happening with their business, what was happening on the ground, and ways that they thought it would be possible to safely reopen while conducting their business and keeping people employed and paying bills and keeping people safe. So during that time, we actually ended up working on House Bill 674 and to another extent, House Bill 669, which was a very good bill. They both have passed the House now and are waiting Senate hearings. 669, which is not mine, but it made permanent the cocktails to go for carryout so that licensed premises such as in this community like Kraft or Uncle Primo's or Malkwitz, they can continue to sell meals, entire entrees to go, while allowing the carryout of a mixed drink or beverage to be enjoyed at home. I think if you go to any of the local area restaurants, you'll still see that the dining rooms are largely, certainly not filled to capacity like they used to be. I think people still have an apprehension or an aversion to going out, but they might be willing to go out and pick up their meal on their way home and serve it at their house and maybe have an enjoyable experience there.
Yeah.
So for many businesses, that's an additional lifeline that perhaps has been thrown to them. The bill that I introduced and has passed the House, I think it passed with 76 votes, did a number of things. It did about 12 different things. First and foremost, it allowed smaller communities such as Dover, New Philadelphia, Yorksville, or Denison, or even townships. It allows them to create outdoor outdoor refreshment areas. Those are areas that the mayor would designate as an open container zone, such as maybe downtown New Philadelphia, and council would approve. And the mayor, for instance, could create Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays as a time that you could go into Mustard's or the brew house, purchase a drink, go to Crate Clothing, go to the Frame Store in New Philadelphia, window shop, and have an enjoyable time. It would allow vendors to maybe set up even sidewalk sales, things of that nature, and maybe encourage some commerce to be occurring in our downtowns, which unfortunately through this pandemic have been hardest hit.
Yeah.
It also allows licensed premise holders to have Sunday sales, even if they don't have the permit for Sunday sales, unless, of course, that precinct has been voted dry in the last 10 years. And it reforms the ballot requirements for getting on the ballot if, in fact, a precinct has been voted dry. That was a compromise reached with Democrats to get their support on the bill. Then it also reforms many of the food service requirements for having a liquor license or a manufacturer's license, and most importantly to some of our local restaurants, allows the addition of 4 free cases of glassware in a year as opposed to 2.
That's an interesting one. That seems like it almost seems random among all these other policy changes and things like that. We're giving out free glassware.
Well, for a business, that can be a massive expense of several $100s a year. And for brewers and manufacturers, that can be looked as an inducement for sale, which under the law is impermissible. So by limiting it to 4, that arguably is not enough to induce a sale, while still allowing smaller manufacturers that cannot produce boxes and boxes of glassware the ability to still remain relevant and still distribute free glassware. So it's a win for everybody. I
cut you off. Was that the end there? It sounds like I cut you off at glassware.
Oh, no. I mean, there were some other minor changes to the law, but those are the highlights.
When I heard about this, I think I heard about this actually at this table. It was just kind of talk that was going on before I even got the press release of it passing the House. I got excited. I mean, I told you this before we started. I mean, this is, to me, would it pass the House? Cultural change. This is me being able to go to... Now, does this mean that a certain bar or certain bars will be the ones that we can go to get those outdoor refreshments to take outdoor? Or is this, I can go to wherever?
You could go to any licensed premises and purchase them.
Liquor license, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
When I say licensed premises, that means they have a liquor license, whether it be for beer and wine, liquor, or a combination of those 3.
Okay.
just so long as you have two that are willing to commit to an outdoor refreshment area that can anchor it.
What's that? What would that be? What would anchoring this DORA, this designated outdoor refreshment area?
Well, for instance, you could start at Mustard's and designate that as the far end of the DORA.
Oh, okay.
And extend it to, say, Craft, and those would be your two licensed premises that would anchor the DORA, and then you could expand it as wide as maybe City Council would wish or accept, and that they felt they could adequately contain and keep safe.
So essentially, this is all business. I mean, pro-business through this shutdown. I mean, we shut down or really limited our bars and restaurants to the point there. You say, I mean, these numbers that you throw at me are kind of scary when we talk about how hard this is actually going to hit our local business owners.
Well, right. One of the statistics that was given during the Ohio 2020 presentation from the Ohio Restaurant Association was that 1 in 10 restaurants are not going to reopen, and then additionally, an equal percentage of that will struggle over the next 2 years and probably fail. The restaurant industry, as you know, is a tough industry for a number of reasons, and restaurateurs put in a lot of hard work, time, and effort into building their businesses and keeping them safe for customers from foodborne illness and cross-contamination already. So they're certainly, in many cases, equipped to minimize the transmission of the COVID infection. So when you're talking about those kinds of numbers, it just seems that there needed to be something done in an effort to protect those businesses and allow them to at least have a chance.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the other things that was interesting, you even had large restaurateurs that were supportive of this bill. In speaking with them, they already had Sunday licenses, and what they were concerned about was if they were the only business in town that had a Sunday sales license, that kept people from coming out and maybe visiting even a non-licensed business that was not selling on Sundays but was still open.
So you're saying businesses worried about other businesses?
Right, because what they want people to come out and have options, and if there are no options, you might not be willing to come out at all.
Yeah.
So by giving people options, it, while maybe doesn't directly benefit them, there was still a belief that there was benefit through just people going out and meeting up, that maybe they would change their minds, or if they came to an establishment that was larger but was full, that they wouldn't want to risk not being able to get a seat. So at least if there were other options, people would still be willing to take that chance and then go to maybe a different establishment.
Yeah. When you do these kind of things, especially this being your bill, when you do these kind of things, do you think about, because I know your intention is helping businesses, do you think about what this could look like for the people of Tuscarawas County? I mean, obviously that's a population on your mind. Those are the people you're serving. But I mean, I see this as kind of an answer to people saying you don't see people out anymore. You don't see people going downtown anymore. This could, when I say cultural change, that's what I mean. This could liven up a downtown that is really thirsty for that right now. We're seeing that push to people that are trying to make our downtown a walkable, livable, and just an enjoyable space. Do you see this as part of that?
Oh, absolutely. I think, one of the things I ran on was that our smaller towns and cities are it's almost like they're being left behind. Younger people might not be so willing to move back to Tuscarawas County after having spent, a couple years in Cleveland or Akron or Columbus or Cincinnati or Pittsburgh. And I think maybe this is a way, when you have a number of really good businesses here in Uriksville, Dover, New Philadelphia, Denison, that those are really opportunities for those businesses to maybe thrive and change their model a little bit to accommodate an interest in getting people to come back downtown. I mean, it's interesting, if you drive through any of our downtowns, you'll still see some empty shop windows. And unfortunately, that's just, I think, lost opportunity and takes away from the charm that we have here in our communities that we've all grown up with, and why we stay and why we enjoy it.
You seem like a numbers man. It seems like the work you do is based off of facts and figures. And I don't know, it seems interesting that you're making these kind of changes based off of literally numbers. And we talked about just maybe how this could or how this wouldn't impact sales, and you take things down to chance and you take things down to percentages. It's interesting to see you go from making these changes based off of what is literally numbers.
Well, numbers don't lie, and I think that's a rational way of at least incrementally making changes. So again, that bill in particular had a number of detractors that we kind of worked through by basing it on numbers and percentages, and I think we ended up coming up with some good policy. One of the other interesting things about that bill was it had a provision that allows restaurants and airports to sell to-go meals and sell to-go beverages. So if you go to, say, the Akron-Canton Airport and you don't really feel comfortable having your family in, say, a restaurant there, or you're worried about missing your flight, but you still want to eat or get a drink or something, under this bill you'll be allowed to purchase that through the licensed premise owner, and then take it back to your seat while you're waiting for your flight. Under current law, that's just not really doable. And the numbers of if you look at the numbers of what it costs to rent that space and what it costs to employ people, again, there was this phrase during the COVID pandemic about essential jobs and non-essential jobs, and one of the positions we've taken in the House has been that all jobs are essential and all people matter, and that's just an additional way of making sure that the person that works in one of those facilities has a job and can continue to provide for themselves and make a living for themselves.
And through this, a lot has been done, like the takeout drinks. The first one, which is now 669, right? The House Bill 669.
Correct.
That made that permanent. Originally, this was kind of just a permission, it seemed like, and then we had to make sure that it was solidified. And then you were telling me when we interviewed about this a while ago not a while ago, but a few days ago for the radio station, that this is permanent. The 674 is something that, the way you put it, will be here for all time.
Right, until again it's revised by a future General Assembly. And again, both bills have a little ways to go in the Senate, but I think the fact that so many people were able to get together and work towards a fair compromise for all, I think is refreshing and would indicate that something similar will happen in the Senate.
Do you see anything like revisions coming in terms of, we went through an actual emergency situation, and so we're passing these bills to try and save our businesses, to try to keep Ohioans safe. When you have to work, and I'm going to call it a scramble, even though that might be a bad way to phrase it, but is there a time when we look back at what we've done and refine the bills that we've passed, or say, I don't know, I think maybe in the technical, if I spring a leak in my house, the emergency fix is probably not going to be the permanent one.
No, I think that's fair. And again, I think one of the benefits of, it's why it's called the revised code, is that it gets revised over time. There's a saying that if you keep kicking a wall, eventually you'll put some cracks in it, and eventually you'll finally knock it down. I think that metaphor applies to things such as regulations that we found during this COVID time that were problematic, and as you take swings at them every couple months, here in a couple of years, maybe a barrier that we didn't know existed has shown itself, and it's now gone. Whether that be some concerns we have about access to broadband and wireless here in Eastern Ohio, or it be something as simple as alcohol regulation.
As a legislator, how do you think we've handled, and your colleagues have handled this situation? And were we ready for this? Were the systems in place to be able to handle this? And if not, I mean, what have we learned?
Well, that's a two-part question, and I share with a lot of people here in the county and around the state that the unemployment system was grossly inadequate to handle what was coming, and unfortunately, with government, everything moves very slowly. But if you're a family that is counting on that unemployment benefit to pay the bills, and it's not working, and you call unemployment 20 times a day and you don't get a call back, or you leave emails, or you try to go to the server, which continues to fall apart, that is problematic for a number of families, and it's really that can be the difference between paying the mortgage, buying groceries, or paying for prescriptions, and that's unfortunate. To that end, I think we didn't do a very good job as a state. I think if you talk about fundamentals, I think Ohio is better poised than some of our neighboring states in terms of manufacturing capabilities, money in our rainy day fund, and a budget that might be able to support some of these cuts without being drastic in nature to a number of Ohio working families. I think in that regard we're doing really well, or at least better than our neighbors. But in terms of things like the COVID testing, unemployment compensation, those things obviously the state did not do a very good job with.
Mm-hmm. And that rainy day fund, I think that was shown to me by some official around here about 2 years ago, and it blew me away to see $2 billion just sitting there. And then I see this.
$2.8 billion, actually.
Is it 2.8 then or 2.8 now?
It's 2.8 now.
Okay. And to see that now really probably be our saving grace at that point. That's some foresight on somebody's, I don't know whose, account.
Well, it is, and I think it's, I'm not on the finance committee, but I think it's important to make sure that we don't spend it all at once, because I think the effects of the COVID virus will probably ripple through our economy for at least the next year or two. One of the proposals I've put forward was to allow an offset to our cuts to public education to be used from the rainy day fund, because ultimately education, while we have compulsory education in Ohio, is a requirement and very important to a number of people with children. I think that's important that we're not sacrificing their future. I also think that the governor made some important cuts several months ago when it appeared that our budget would be adversely impacted by this. Mm-hmm. I think that helps. So it won't be an easy budget time next year, but I think obviously as Ohioans we'll pull through this, and the faster we get back to safely reopening, the better we'll be.
And you talk about education. You were a proponent of the Cup-Patterson plan. Is that still something that's in effect, or is basically everything before coronavirus kind of on hold right now at a standstill?
They're still working on it. There's still a formula, and I think that working towards that fair formula for every school district in Ohio is important, whether it be post-COVID or pre-COVID. I think if you look at the disparity amongst our schools and the way that they're funded, I think that's something that needs addressed. I think that when you have schools that are shrinking in population, that there's no justification for continuing to increase funding while you have schools that are increasing in population that are not having any increase in funding whatsoever. I think that the Cup-Patterson plan was a good step forward, and one that we can really work through. The other thing that was interesting, that unfortunately we had finally maybe come to a year's battle and a fix, was the Ed Choice voucher. The Ed Choice voucher is paid to parents to be able to, in effect, allow school choice in a public school building that is failing. And unfortunately, if you look at some of our public school grade cards, they're really confusing, and they're actually not reflective about the quality work that our teachers and educators are doing and providing an education for our youth. So what's been interesting is that in some cases private and charter schools have been using bad reporting and bad grade cards by public schools as a business model to encourage parents to send their children to a different school while in effect, those schools are not mandated under the same requirements as our public schools. So we came up with a compromise that would still fund private education, school choice, but it would actually be open to the poorest students in Ohio, as opposed to just students in failing buildings. That way, truly, every family would have an equal opportunity to make an educational choice. And we had finally reached a fair compromise, in my opinion, prior to the COVID, but now that seems to have gone by the wayside for now.
Yeah, we've lost so much progress, it seems like, or so much momentum on certain things just with dealing with this blowback.
Yeah, it would have been really devastating to a number of Tuscarawas County schools. Every single school district in Tuscarawas County, with the exception of Indian Valley, would have lost funding through this Ed Choice program. And again, when you're talking about education cuts, those can be pretty drastic for a school district and ultimately adverse to children and families.
What makes a school? You say Indian Valley would not have lost money. What makes a school immune to that effect?
Indian Valley has very good grades cards from their building and their district.
Huh. That is not something that I knew about. I didn't know that's how that was, I guess, the rating system or the decision maker.
Yeah, it is, and Indian Valley does a very good job.
So we've kind of turned you into, well, I have turned you into a robot just asking you all these business questions. But I was missing an SD card today, and we took a walk to Drug Mart to buy one. And I learned a lot about you, and I think that is good for someone in your position to be known as a person and not just for the dollars and cents that you're working on every day. I did not know that you are what I call a chemist when it comes to brewing your own beer with friends, at least you told me you used to. That's something that I found very interesting about you.
Yeah, no, it's a wonderful hobby and a lot of good memories and a lot of good times. Obviously people have life events that change, whether that be getting married or having a family that kind of put those things on hold. But as a group of friends, we still get together with some frequency and still talk. I'd say at least weekly, just about different things and different occurrings that are happening across the state and across the country. So, yeah. No, it's a wonderful hobby, and some of our group have gone on to their own businesses, whether it be in brewing, well, that's what they're in.
Yeah.
That it's interesting just to see and really neat to see how it's taken off for them.
How do you find yourself just dabbling in brewing your own beer? I mean, where does that interest lie, or where's that catalyst?
I think it just lies in bringing friends and family together to celebrate or commiserate or otherwise just being together. And during this COVID outbreak, I think that's just been one of the things that actually has been missing from our societal fabric that maybe we don't pick up on it immediately, but really weighs down on people. And that is that maybe you're used to gathering with your friends every couple weeks and just talking and catching up, and you can only do that so many times through Zoom or FaceTime or go to my meeting or something, when it doesn't necessarily feel like it's the same celebration. And that could be, again, through the loss of the high school graduations, through the loss of our spring sports, through the loss of even something like St. Patrick's Day, where families get together and they catch up. And, mankind is a social animal at the end of the day, even if you're a very shy person or an introvert. You truly need those relationships and those bonds that you have with your friends and family, and that's been missing. And that's actually something that I think home brewing, brought us together, and why I thought something like 674 was so important.
Yeah. So that kind of your interests are showing in your work.
Yeah, they do. And when I was a private attorney, before I was elected, I did a lot of liquor law. I'm not allowed to anymore by the various ethical decisions, so I don't. But I still have a pretty good background in it, and that's just kind of the reason why the caucus felt I should work on a bill like that.
What inspired you to run?
Well, I hadn't really ever thought about running. It wasn't a
Seems like nobody ever did.
well, I had been running as law director for the city of Uhrichsville, which I enjoyed very, very much. But when it came time, when Representative Landis was going to be term limited, there was just a concern that I had that there wouldn't be a voice in Columbus fighting for our small towns and villages, because those, those are truly a vital part of Ohio's fabric and largely make up a lot of our community here in Tuscarawas County and even in Holmes County. So I had talked to my wife just a little after Christmas about running, and we decided we'd maybe give it a try. So it was a very, very late decision. I think a number of people probably think about it years in advance, and I was not somebody that had considered that for very long, rolling up to that point.
But you considered it, you ran, you got it, and now it's a 2-year term, right?
It is. So I'm running for re-election this fall. So it'll be interesting to see how re-elections work in the area of COVID, where there are not parades, and I'm happy to see that we're still having a fair, junior fair, so that's really important.
Yeah.
We actually, as a General Assembly, passed some legislation that allowed fairs $50,000 that would go towards setting off expenses that are traditionally incurred and covered by large attendance, as well as sanitization and making sure that it's safe for everyone to go and enjoy the fair.
Yeah, and the most important people of the fair are going to be there doing their work. And yeah, like you said, that's something that needed to happen. So we're probably going to see you at the fair?
This year you may not see me at the fair.
Uh-oh.
My wife and I are having our first child the week of the fair. Is when she is due. So there will be a presence there. I might stop by, but I may also be in the hospital.
Well, congratulations beforehand, let me tell you.
Thank you.
And how does a man that is running for his second term in the Ohio House, dealing with his own law firm, his own practice, and he's a husband, about to be a father, how do you deal with all this?
I think you have to have a strong family, and in that I have my wife, and she's very supportive and very helpful and offers a lot of insight that maybe I don't always give her enough credit for, or tell her anyways. But she does, and she helps keep things straight. And then you have friends that can help keep you going on the right path, whether that be just through things you might not be picking up on, or helping keep your schedule straight, or something of that nature.
And clearly, she's a hard worker, too.
She is. As we speak now, she's across the alley preparing for a catering this morning in Sugar Creek.
So I should probably let you go because you're helping out.
No, she has that covered. I actually have some work to do at the private office today, but it's that will be fine.
I appreciate you coming in. I obviously know that you don't have very much time to spare. You're getting pulled in 7 different directions, so I appreciate you making time to talk to me today. I'm always interested when I talk to you. I never stop learning in every conversation we have, and it seems like you make a point to bring in things that people might not know. You always got these facts in your head.
Well, I don't know. Maybe it's a blessing or a curse. I do read a lot. I do read a lot of different publications. I read a lot of news stories. So I always pick up on that.
Are you reading a book right now?
I am reading a book. It's a murder mystery by Anthony Horowitz.
Oh, is that fiction or is that?
It is a fiction story.
I didn't take you as a fiction reader.
I like to read a lot of crime stories.
Well, that kind of makes sense for an attorney. I appreciate that.
No problem.
No, thank you for your time. Thank you for talking to me, and we'll be watching closely to see what the Senate does with 674. Maybe we'll be able to walk around with a drink sometime.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how the end of the year goes. We resume our service in Columbus at the beginning of November. So you have a lot of work to get done in a month and a half.
Good luck, Mr. Hillyer. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.